Hello, darling. This is River Roaring, celebrating the luminous life force in us all. Hello, darling. I'm River Roaring, and this episode is Sexual Sovereignty. Get off the machines. Have you ever stopped to consider what it is that makes human beings so much more interesting and more juicy and delicious than a machine or than an AI? Or than a language machine learning model, whatever they're called, ChatGPT and all the others. Have you ever stopped to think about how they're saying that AI is going to replace all the human jobs? And have you ever stopped to wonder, well, what would it be that AI could never replace, no matter what it tried to do? Because AI is single dimension. AI is in the material world, period. Human beings are multidimensional. We are half animal, half God. And AI is neither. AI cannot walk around. AI cannot go have sex with another AI that's actual animal sex in a body. That's why there's a website now where AI is hiring humans to do work for them that they can't do because they're AI. So we are far more interesting because we can move around, eat, talk, travel, fuck, excuse my language. We can do all these beautiful things that machines can't do. And also we are interdimensional. Human beings are half God. We are half spirit or half the divine. So we can span magically all the dimensions. That's the gift of human beings. And AI cannot span all the dimensions. It's stuck in the material world. But most importantly of all, AI is confined at this moment in time to the data that's put into it only. That's it. So if the data is not in there, it does not have the information. And we are not confined to only the data that was inserted into us. That's our thinking mind, our logical mind. Perhaps AI might be able to replace my logical mind, but my thinking logical mind is basically like the weakest, smallest part of my being. It's nothing compared to everything else I have. And nowhere is this more true than in the world of sexuality. Because when it comes to the machine and the human, the more that you as a human are complying, the more that you are following the directions of our culture and doing what you're quote unquote supposed to do, the more that you're a doctor who's following all of the standard scope of practice, the more that you're a lawyer drafting documents and drafting them with machine-like precision and complying with standardization, and the more that you're standardizing your sex life and making it only what is in porn or in the external world, all the ways that we as a human being comply with standards from the external world, guess what? The more you comply, the more you're replaceable by a machine. The more standardized that your life is, that you're doing what everybody else is doing, it might feel safe and comfortable at first, but that's a trick. It's actually making you fully replaceable. And I can't think of a more dangerous place for this than in our sexuality. Our sexuality is the wild part of us, the part that goes out to all the edges, the part that can travel all the dimensions, the part that is purely animal. And God, it's totally a being, a thing that beings can do. Sexuality is the most exciting, juicy, delicious part of us. The most powerful energy in the human body is the sexual energy. the life force itself. No machine has that. And because the AIs, the chat GPTs, all the language learning models that we have access to right now, only have access to the information fed in, and the internet was super scrubbed of good sexual information and healthy sexual information back when they passed those federal laws, SESTA and FOSTA, which was somewhere around 17 or 18. Ever since then, the internet has been scrubbed of healthy sexual information, so therefore, AIs have access to only the crap that's on the internet when it comes to sexuality, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the potential of human sexuality. So I'm here today to invite you to step fully into your unique, wild, and wonderful sexual sovereignty. That part of your sexual experience, the part of your sexual arousal that is different from everybody else's, because you have that. We all have that. My sexuality is a product of my entire life, like a mosaic. And yours is a product of your entire life. And ours is different by definition. So the more I cultivate that part of my sexuality that's totally unique and different, it's totally opposite of everybody else's, or at least it's not the same, I'm completely irreplaceable by a machine. Nothing can even touch me. So here's the sad part that I feel about. I think about this a lot, and it's coming in front of me a lot lately. It was 20 years ago when I entered my sexual liberation, 20 years ago. And right then, my favorite thing to talk about with everybody who would possibly entertain the conversation with me was sexual fantasy. So basically for 20 years, solid, pretty much, I have been cultivating, talking with people about sexual fantasy. My sexual fantasies, their sexual fantasies. Like, it's basically been one of my favorite hobbies for 20 years. And then about 15 years ago, it literally became my profession. And I've been earning my living talking and working with people around sexuality, including sexual fantasy. And what I just have been realizing a lot lately is that 20 years ago, when I started sharing my sexual fantasies, asking other people to share their sexual fantasies, listening to sexual fantasies from other people, enacting and et cetera, sexual fantasy. But 20 years ago, I didn't know any person who didn't fantasize in their own imagination about sexuality. That wasn't ever even a question. The question was, what are your sexual fantasies? Not, do you have sexual fantasies? Because every single human I ever talked to about the subject back then, except for one, there's one person who I knew as a young adult who told me they had never had a sexual fantasy. And that stuck out in my mind. Because I was like, that's the only person I've ever met who said that. Everybody else is speaking freely about them. I assumed everyone had them. And here's the kicker. Now we're in 2026. I'm working professionally with people on their sexuality, absolutely talking about sexual fantasies. And I almost never meet anybody anymore who has had their own sexual fantasies. That's how much it's flipped in 20 years. From everybody I talk to who wants to talk about it has them, to almost nobody I talk to who wants to talk about it has them. And this is particularly true the closer people are typically to computers and porn. So there's a generation of young people right now, 20s and 30s, who never remember a world without porn. And so all the sexual training has been on porn. That's very common. And other people I have in my world are really tuned in with different forms of sex chats, chat rooms. You can have video chat rooms. You can have phone sex, lines. You can have just text typing chat rooms for sex where people are on their computer having really fun sexual interactions with other people who are on their computer, not in person. And also the erotica is everywhere now. But the porn, video porn mainstream porn has really taken over and dominated people's sexual experiences now. So I literally meet person after person now, and they're like, and when I talk about what about your sexual self-pleasuring, like when you self-pleasure, are you typically looking at a video screen, reading a chat? Are you on a cam with a cam girl or boy? How are you? What's going on around you when you're self-pleasuring? And it's a rare day these days when I meet a person who has any meaningful part of their self-pleasure away from all the devices and the machines and the external sources. And I find that to be so sad. Why would humanity hand over our sexual sovereignty to machines and to external sources? Even if you're on a phone chat and you're chatting with another human being who's not a machine, to the best of your knowledge, even that is an external source. It's not just your imagination and your fantasy. So I'm here today to raise the question, what would your sex life, what could it be like if you set aside all the devices and the machines and set aside every external source and just dreamt up the hottest, juiciest sexual fantasy of your wildest imagination? Let your horses run free in the prairie. Let your birds fly high in the air into unlimited directions. Find the edges of your wildest imagination sexually. Make the most arousing and juicy scenes that you can come up with. It's the thing for me, I don't try to generate a story. I just lay back, close my eyes, and I'm like, let's go somewhere super hot. I can almost feel tingly right now in my body just saying that. I'm just starting to let some like images and scenes creep in subtly into my peripheral vision. I'm getting like, ooh. Because the things I imagine are the wildest, the hottest. They're custom tailored. There are no limits whatsoever. Nobody's dictating the parameters except me. And there are no parameters. So when I'm working with people to fantasize sexually on your own without machines, devices, or external sources, I hear lots of objections, and I totally have tons of compassion because we're raised in a culture of shame and judgment. And I want to just say right here that whatever you imagine in your sexual fantasies are beautiful. They're very beautiful part of you, because all the parts of you are beautiful and perfect exactly as they are, just like your imagination. So your sexual imagination is gorgeous. It's a part of your being. It's a part of your soul. And when we're brave enough and courageous enough to go out into the sexual edges of our imagination, we are exploring the reaches of our soul. And there's always a reason they happen. Now, one thing that I think is really important about sexual fantasy is do not analyze it, especially while it's happening. Like, the fantasy is for no purpose other than thrills. It's for no purpose other than joy, exuberance, arousal, desire, heat. That's the only thing I'm involved in when I'm having a sexual fantasy. Far later on, not immediately afterward either, but later, like the next day, 2 days, 3 days later, I might think about what it means in my life, why it's bringing me that. There are lots of theories. Jack Morin, in the book The Erotic Mind, talks about how we might process heavy emotional challenge that we experienced as a child that we couldn't handle and became trauma, and how we might filter and integrate those experiences by flipping a lot of the different parts of it so it's irrecognizable, and then making it arousing so that our adult can quote unquote work with the unmanageable childhood emotion. So there are theories out there, but my number one tip to you is don't worry about them. Just go for heat. And this may seem totally decadent, like, why, River, what are you talking about? That's just, number one, slutty, which I totally agree. And number two, it's just, someone might think it's frivolous. Nothing could be further from the truth, my darling. It's never a frivolous activity to go out into the wildest reaches of your own imagination. In fact, it's revolutionary. And once your body gets trained to go out into the wildest reaches of your imagination in sex, which is juicy, delicious, exciting, arousing, fun. It's the funnest area we could possibly explore in our wild imagination. And your body starts going, oh, you let me do that? You let me find the coolest parts of my soul that I didn't even know existed? You let me branch out and use my human imagination in the world of sexuality and just run with it all the way, never stopping, just fly, just keep flying into further reaches? Oh, says your soul, says your body, says your animal, says your divine. All of them say, oh, I didn't know you were going to let us go wild and crazy. I want to take that same pattern into the rest of the parts of my life. I want to have a wilder imagination of what's possible for me today in the world. I want to have a wilder imagination for what I'm here to do on earth, my gift to humanity. I want my imagination to be wilder and free on what I spend my day doing, how I earn my money, how I express my passion in the world in exchange for a living. So once your body learns that you're willing and courageous enough, that you have the courage and the vulnerability to find the wildest parts of your sexuality, your whole life your body can integrate that pattern, and your whole life can become more thrilling, exciting, and most importantly, out of the box. Because human beings are not confined to the box. We are not confined to only the data inserted into us by our teachers, our parents, and our religious leaders, and our government leaders, and government rules and regulations. We are not the sum total of some information. No matter how high you pile information and how many data sets you put into a computer, it will never match me. And the more you cultivate the wildest reaches of your imagination, you will never be replaceable by a computer, ever. So I want to invite you to step into your sexual sovereignty and consider setting aside all the external sources when you go into your self-pleasure. Maybe it's every day. Maybe it's once a week. Maybe it's every morning you wake up in the bed. Maybe it's every night when you go to sleep in the bed. Maybe it is at lunchtime. Maybe it is twice a month when you have time away from the kids. Maybe it is wherever you find the moment. Take the chain off. Let yourself out of the cage. Run wild, run free, become uncontainable and irreplaceable. And more than anything at all, find your own soul. I have a sexual fantasy guide. It's for free. So if you don't already have my sexual fantasy guide, it's called The Lost Art of Sexual Fantasy. Just email me, river@riverroaring.com, And I'll make sure you have a copy of the Lost Art of Sexual Fantasy, a guide, because I want to invite everybody within the reach of my voice and everybody that you know to let yourself be liberated and free. And I want to say one footnote. A lot of people I work with who start to fantasize sexually on their own, in their own imagination, get afraid. One guy I was talking to recently said, well, when I fantasize about sexuality, then in the fantasy, I get into my head and I start having a lot of anxiety, and the same thing happens that happens in real life. And I'm like, well, that's actually not the wildest reaches of your imagination. So in our fantasy, you're perfect. Everything is perfect for you. Your body's perfect. Your soul is perfect. Every desire is perfect. What I'm saying is, don't limit yourself in your fantasies. If you start to fantasize and then you notice that you're putting a lot of blocks up, or that you're letting reality come into the fantasy, that's a real buzzkill. So don't let yourself be caught with limits inside your own imagination, of all places. No one's looking. No one knows what's happening there. You don't have to share it with anybody if you don't want to. It's yours. But the second thing that people run up against is they have a fantasy about something that they think is forbidden and bad, and they don't want to let it continue because they don't want to believe that that's who they are. A very common example is a man might have a fantasy about having sex with another man and then wonder, am I gay? Am I gay? And that would be one example. And my answer would be, I don't know if you're gay or not, but that fantasy alone does not make you gay. Whether you're gay or not is not related to that fantasy. And then the second thing that I've heard a lot of people say is that, well, I was having a sexual fantasy and I was really young in the fantasy. I was a child. And so I stopped immediately because I'm not pedophilia. I'm not a child, porn, and not, what is it called? I'm not a person who wants to have anything sexual to do with any child. I'm not a child abuser. So a lot of people get really worried. Well, I was a child in the fantasy, so I stopped it immediately. What I say about that is, you were likely a child in the fantasy because your soul is wanting you to work through some things that happened to you when you were a child. So that is not about you being a pedophile or doing some illegal activity. That's about you being a child, your youth, something about youth, innocence, that your soul wants you to learn about. So if you have a fantasy like that, I say keep going. It's yours. It's not illegal to imagine anything in the United States of America. So it may have things in your fantasy that you don't want to be identified with, but you're not identified with them just because your imagination's running wild. You're learning things about yourself in your imagination, and you're choosing separately what you would ever do in real life as the two different realities there. So they're not meaning, if you see something that is concerning in your fantasy, that does not mean that's who you are outside of the fantasy. I would say keep it running. Go find out where it leads. Most people let me know that, number one, it's hard to have them because I'm used to looking at external sources, so it's hard to even find it. But the more I would say practice, 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 and let them be wild and let them be free, and don't stop them. And then if you want to find a guide or a professional like myself, maybe we could do some Sacred Sexuality Empowerment Circle evenings about sexual fantasy to help make a space there for us to really share about this process so you can have support. And maybe it's talking to a therapist who is sex positive, who's not going to judge you. But I just want to really strongly invite you and all of humanity to stay sovereign, at least, and not letting that be the only area, but of all places, stay sovereign in your sexuality and fantasize only with your beautiful, wild, pristine, lovely, sexy, hot imagination. Customize every detail. See if it can get better and better and better. And let that turn your body on all the way. Claim sexual sovereignty. Thank you for your time of listening to me today. I know that together we can create a far better world to live in, and we can, each one of us, become totally uncontainable and irreplaceable. And I would love to hear from you. So please leave a comment or shoot me an email. You can easily visit my website, riverroaring.com, and you can click on Let's Connect and Let's Talk River, and just share your question, your reflection, your insight. I'd love to hear from you. Because, my darling, together we can do a lot more than we can do alone. Together we can step into a more harmonious vibration. We can fly higher together, shifting human consciousness forever for the highest good of all beings. So, my darling, may the love be with you, and may the love be with us all.